depressed, we want to retreat to our music, which is probably going to make things worse, oftentimes than better. The music we retreat to is actually maybe even contributing to our problem in the first place, because it's the music that's on most stations. It's stuff all the cool people are listening to, whatever causes us to listen to. Maybe we actually like the sound of it, fine. But there's actually better music to sing than those things. And I think Luther's right. I've experienced this in my own life. Music, especially music about God and what he's done for you, is very powerful in times of depression, anxiety, despair, even suicide. And I think we would do well to actually know that music, to actually have the possibility of hearing it in some way, whether it be having a Christian music CD that's helpful to you or whatever it is, to actually have that possibility even to listen to it. And we are blessed here to have a Christian radio station or two in this area, so there's always that option, I suppose. But, and you know what? Just any old Christian song's not going to do the trick either. Because, if the song you're listening to is about, oh God, I will keep your law perfectly, I will follow you all in all of your ways, that actually isn't going to help you when you're down in the dumps. It's all it's going to do is add an extra burden to you. You're like, oh, great, now in addition to pleasing my mom, I got to please God too with everything that I do. Great, All it's going to do is make things worse for you. But when you turn on the radio or pop in a CD or go to church and hear a song that talks about Jesus entering our suffering, everything that we go through, he's actually experienced himself, and he knows just what it's like. And that he's borne that suffering in our place, so that when our days do come to an end on this life, we will never have to suffer again. Any kind of depression, despair, anxiety, doubt, etc. That makes a world of difference in our attitude, when we're reminded again that we are not in charge of our lives, that it is God who has control over them. He's the giver of life. He's the one who takes it according to his good time. That kind of music could actually make a difference for you in those times. So anyway, I would just encourage you to, and I'm going on a rant, but here's part of the problem too. Many of us haven't necessarily grown up with a good library of church music even in our minds too. And that may be a result of maybe not being in church regularly, or even just having the music change so often in church that there's nothing that we do more than once a year or something like that, so it's very hard to actually have something stick in our minds. I think there's value to actually learning church music. And I'm not saying, some kind of thee, thou type hymn necessarily, but, actually having some songs that are very meaningful to you, that you can fall back on them in times when things don't go very well. I experienced this when I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, a year and a half ago. It was very helpful to have a bunch of music that I appreciated and could actually get some spiritual benefit from on my laptop right there in the hospital. It made a big difference. If I had turned on Z93 at that point, it just wouldn't have cut it in terms of give me real comfort. I may have been able to, tap my feet or headbang, something like that. But that wouldn't have actually cured anything. In fact, it probably would have made my condition worse if I had done that. Does that make sense? That's a challenge to you probably, though. Something that you're not really wanting to do, to develop this library, so to speak, of Christian music that's for you. But I'm serious about encouraging you to do that, especially as you go on and go on to college maybe and leave your family, your church family, or your actual real family here, to have that library of songs. Number 5, and then we'll wrap up our discussion here. Luther counsels those who are tormented by their sin to move from law to gospel. Probably the number one reason that people, especially Christians, fall into depression is that they have all these expectations placed upon them by others, and they feel like they can't satisfy anybody. Is this resonating with anybody? Okay? They have all these different people expecting them to behave a certain way, and they don't feel they can actually pull it off. And so they get angry, maybe at their parents, at their friends, and especially at God. And so if I tell you, hey, snap out of it, start living like a Christian, that's probably not going to make you actually improve. But moving from law, that is, do this, to gospel, that being, you know what? Even your failings, even though you don't do everything you ought to do perfectly, that's forgiven. It's covered. God's not going to hold it against you. That can really free up the troubled conscience to live a life in the forgiveness of sins, to fall back always on Jesus and his shed blood for us. And we are to believe the gospel even when it is contradicted by our own sinfulness or feelings. Even if you don't feel forgivable at a certain time, thanks be to God that our salvation isn't based on our feelings. Your salvation is certain, even in spite of the way that you feel. And I think I'll wrap it up there, at least for our video.